So here we are with Andrew Ihamaki. He is the current education programming coordinator for the Art Gallery of Peterborough. He's a writer, an artist, predominantly working with oil paints, graphite, and ink, currently based in Peterborough, Ontario. So I'll ask you just off the bat, why Peterborough? What brought you there?
I was actually born here.
Born there.
Yeah. Like everyone who comes from a small town, they can't wait to get out of that small town. And yeah, moved away when I was, I think about grade 7 or 8 or something like that. Kind of lived just north of here, and then went to school at U of T and then Sheridan as well. And then kind of came back for teachers college and then kind of stuck around ever since.
Yeah. Yeah, you just couldn't resist your old stomping grounds.
Yeah.
You think that's where you're going to spend your days now?
Pardon?
You think that's where you're going to spend the rest of your days now too?
I don't know. I mean, there's a part of me that just doesn't want to spend this much life to only go 4 blocks from where I grew up. So
Feel that, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I think there's still a part of me that still wants to explore and travel a little bit more. But I mean, as far as towns go, Peterborough isn't that bad. I such a great arts and music scene here, and you know, it's there's a reason why people kind of come and they stay and never leave. They call it I don't even know what they call it, but there's everyone who comes to Trent, about half of them never leave Peterborough. They kind of come for this, kind of stick around. So
yeah, it's in a really nice location. You're northeast of Toronto, so you're out of the hustle, but you're still in a little bit of the bustle. So you're still a little bit there. So it's a nice little landing spot. But you're kind of almost, you say that Peterborough is a great space for the arts, and it is, but you kind of almost seem to be a leader in that case, making it is what it is for the arts as the current education programming coordinator for the Art Gallery of Peterborough. So you kind of have your hands in it. You're with the policy makers, you're with you're on boards of committees, and so you seem to really have a voice. What drew you to that position after your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I was always drawn to the gallery. Originally kind of drew there as kind of a volunteer position, looking to get some experience before I went into teachers college, and then kind of really connected with the local community while I was there. Got a chance to kind of meet some artists that were either exhibiting or coming in for the shop that was at the gallery there, or just you know, attending openings and events and stuff. Yeah, I think it's one of those really interesting things that you said, you know, being a leader. What's so interesting about Peterborough is, you know, I think it's such a communal growth of the way the arts are kind of, you know, as people kind of develop and push those policies, it's really community driven, and, you know, everyone, you know, is really, you know, invested in a way too. You know, they're trying to, yeah, you can't really go too far in Peterborough or have too many conversations without seeing so many different faces. And, you know, it's really interesting at the same time too, because, you know, everyone's really just out to create an even stronger, more vibrant arts community here. And, you know, I'm just honestly feel privileged to be a part of it. Wow.
Yeah, I wonder, I hope you said that in your interview. Great. But that's very true. It's a chicken eggy situation. And in your case, if you give the people something, then if you supply it, there is that demand. And in your case, there's that beautiful give and take, which is already there if you give the resources. So
yeah, no, nice. It's really lucky to be a part of that. And it's one of those things too about Peterborough is growing up here, you know, I didn't actually see that there was such a rich community. You know, it's one of those things that was always here. I mean, you talk to people that have been around forever, and it just seems so inherent in the DNA of this town that it's always been this, like, you know, kind of DIY grassroots kind of, you know, we don't have it, let's make it. I mean, Art Space, the Artist Run Center, is one of the, you know, the earliest in, you know, in Canada and Ontario. One of the few starting organizations that really advocated for artist rights, and to have that here, you know, that really there was a lot of amazing influential artists at that time that really led to the development of that. And it's, I think it was even here before that, and it's definitely still permeating and kind of rippling out after that as well. Which is so amazing to see. I think, so when I kind of came back from school to kind of do some volunteering, working with the education program, getting a chance to actually see that, it was like, in that proverbial movie where you put on the glasses and all of a sudden everything is just illuminated and you see everything. It was kind of that same experience for me, just kind of being a little blind to it, thinking Peterborough was just kind of this, boring old waspy kind of central Ontario town. And then all of a sudden, I see that and I get exposed to it and just see how just vibrant and amazing it is. And honestly, the people here are pretty incredible too. I'll be honest, this interview is mostly going to be me just gushing about all the other people. So I hope you don't mind, because it is really amazing.
Of course,
it's really beautiful. And somewhat of a common theme is starting to present itself as the value of community in the art world. It seems with the position of the education programming coordinator for an art gallery, you have the opportunity to really strongly affect the foundations of that community as kids are growing up. Let me step back a little bit. Can you tell me what you do as the education programming coordinator for the gallery?
Yeah, absolutely. So I developed the education programming in collaboration with the curator. So she brings in the exhibitions, and then we kind of work together to create programming that's going to work not only for more traditional school groups, community groups looking to get tours, a little studio activity, but then also kind of extending that into summer camps and March break camps, but then also looking at doing more specialized programming, working with the artists to do value added kind of programming to the community, having the chance for the artists to share their craft, to be able to, for the community to learn directly from the artists is a really amazing thing as well. And then also looking at different outreach opportunities as well. So working with local community organizations and creating partnerships and developing different programming that kind of works hand in hand with them. And then also one of the major things that I do that's, kind of under the scope of the education programming coordinator is we do a large regional studio tour every year. So in the fall, we open up, it's a juried exhibition or a juried tour. So every February we get that the application goes out and people apply that are local here to be able to open up their studios to the public. So the jury is comprised of local artists, people who've been on the tour before, arts professionals and administrators as well. And then as we get into the summer, we open up an exhibition featuring all of their work at the gallery, and then also in the fall. So it's actually coming up here in a few weeks, September 25th and 26th, where is the tentative dates. Of course, knock on wood, we don't know what's best laid plans always seem to change these days, but so it gives the opportunity for the community to see artist studios, for the artists to demonstrate their work. It's really just a great educational opportunity for everyone to kind of get an understanding of what it's like to be an artist, but also for the community to get a chance to interact with their community members and their neighbors. So often a lot of these studios aren't these large commercial spaces, but they're in the artists' homes, and they either have, they might have a shed in the backyard, it might be a room in their basement, something like that. It's a really amazing opportunity, and it's really amazing to be able to support that as well, getting the chance to support the artists and give them a chance to show their work, make connections, develop and grow with the community as well. And that's one of those other things is kind of under the umbrella of that job as well. But it's probably it's really definitely one of the most exciting things about it.
That's interesting. It seems like that last part specifically, the studio tours highlight the process over the final result of art. Is that a conscious thing that we would want to highlight?
Yeah, I mean, that's there. A lot of the artists do offer demonstrations while they're doing it, so people can actually see that kind of start to finish process. It really kind of, in a way, kind of brings the veil down. It gives it people. There's something that's kind of, if you're not, a lot of people are kind of intimidated by artists or the arts in general. Sometimes they can have sort of like elitist undertones. People feel very excluded from it, but the truth is arts are so welcoming, and everyone is can find a home within the arts. And it's really amazing to kind of break down those barriers, because we do at the gallery, it's a challenge to sometimes bring people in to see the exhibitions, but the studio tour kind of offers this kind of easier access point for people to come in. They might go, oh, I've heard about that. That sounds really interesting. Or they're driving down the street and they see the signs and they go, I wonder what that's about. And they kind of they might even see a neighbor that has their sign up and just go, oh, I haven't talked to them before. Maybe I'll go say hi. And then in that process, they go in and they see the studio. They see, the process behind what is art making. It's not just painting. There's so many other layers to that. Or I said painting, but we have so many different diverse kind of artists. We have ceramicists, woodworkers, sculptors, textile artists, photographers. It's actually, in this year too, we welcomed our first installation-based artist too, which I think is pretty cool as well. Yeah, to have that kind of opportunity for people to kind of, one less barrier for people to access the arts and kind of engage with the community. I think it's really important. And I think that's what's so exciting about it as well.
I definitely agree. To touch on what Matt was saying, there's value in making that process conscious. And I completely agree. The Alton Mill, I forget where it's located, but when I went in, they kind of had exactly what you were describing. I was able to walk into the artist studios because they just left them at it might not be exactly what you're saying, but you were able to go in and see the process and see their leftover croissants and their half-finished coffees, and like everything, it's like they up and left, but their art was, so then you're able to see the humanity and the process of it. And I found value in that, and I found that making that process conscious is very valuable. So I agree. I think that was also a very valuable question. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, so I've been to the Alton Mill as well. It's in Alton, Ontario.
Oh,
yeah,
that's where it is. Okay.
And so they've got some big gallery space there, and then it's a lot of studios on the second floor particularly. And like Adriana was saying, it's a really interesting sort of dynamic to see the finished art on the walls and for it to be a gallery space, but also the process behind it. Is that something that you've considered for the Peterborough Gallery, having residential artists or resident artists maybe is the term, or is there a studio space in the gallery? Or is that something you'd be interested in?
So yeah, we have had artists in residence in the past. The one challenge about it is our space is a little limited in terms of we have one studio space and only the one. So it kind of, it's either one or the other. We could offer, studio programs for, groups and schools and stuff, or kind of an artist residency. At least the way it's set up right now. The way that we have done things in the past, we have worked with partnership organizations. I'm thinking just a couple. It's one of those things that I'm really reluctant to name one because I want to name them all, and I hate to leave anyone off the list. But EC3, which is the Electric City Culture Council here in town, Public Energy is another one. Just recently, they launched what they called Airing at the Mount, which was an old, the Mount is this old, like, kind of non-covenant, like, for a writer, I'm really always struggling to find words. I'm better at writing them than actually speaking them. But and so when the nuns had kind of left, I think unfortunately, I think they had passed away, and then this building kind of was sitting there. A way to kind of rejuvenate the space, because it had kind of become this pseudo community center. I think it's affordable housing now, but prior to that, it was how do we kind of reactivate this space? And so there was artist residencies, there was performances, there were installations, there was exhibitions that went in this kind of a festival, what they called Airing on the Mount. Now, since there aren't residents, now that it's a residential space, we're kind of working in collaboration with them as well to kind of to activate what is now an old, I wouldn't say abandoned school here in Peterborough, but Airing at the King George is the next kind of iteration of that. And again, yeah, we don't necessarily always have the capabilities or the resources to have an artist in residence, just because if you haven't been to the gallery, it's actually it's kind of an interesting building. It's an old 18th century kind of estate kind of house that was kind of put there right next to the lake here in Peterborough. And then in the 70s, they built this large extension. So we kind of have this dual interesting space. So in the house, the second floor of the house, we have the studio spaces and some offices. In the lower level, we have our gallery shop and kind of more administrative offices. And then kind of in the new extension, that's where we have everything else, like the vault, the exhibition spaces, all of that. So it is kind of limited because it is such an older building too. So yeah, we would love to continue to do that. Finding ways to do that would be amazing. And, we have in the past, but right now it seems the best way for us to kind of move forward with that is through the partnerships, because other organizations may be able to find those spaces like the Mount and King George School as well. So yeah, but it is kind of interesting. The one thing that's kind of popped up here in Peterborough lately over the past few years is the First Friday Art Crawl that's kind of sprung up. And through that, there's a building called the Commerce Building. So it's right downtown, and the second and third floor of that building is all artist studios. So what happens is, the first Friday of every month, all the different some cafes, some businesses will offer and show the works of some artists. But then when you go to the main central hub at the commercial building there, a lot of the artists who are working there and have their studios there open them up for the public as well. So it's a really great opportunity. And then there's kind of pop-up galleries, and then there's kind of existing galleries that kind of operate each month or open up exhibitions every month too. So that's kind of the closest that we've here in Peterborough, but it is a pretty amazing thing to see as well. So
sorry, just to confirm, the art crawl isn't at the gallery, it's at the Commerce Building?
So yeah, it's kind of just a downtown phenomenon that kind of popped up. There was Paulo Fortin, who started Evans Contemporary here in Peterborough, and then kind of expanded that into Star X, kind of was the forerunner for that and started building that programming up, having those exhibitions that would launch on the first Friday. And then it kind of just grew and grew and grew and grew. And then now, but his downtown space was kind of in that Commerce Building there. And then it's just kind of rippled out. So it's mainly, there's a committee now, the First Friday Peterborough Committee, and they kind of work with the local businesses and the different places downtown and the artists to kind of develop this kind of encompassing event that happens every month, which is pretty cool. And right now that's been, a little impacted with COVID, but as we kind of, what hasn't, right? So even mention that anymore. It's just like, oh yeah, the sky's blue, right? So, everyone knows that at this point. So
all right. So I'm going to get into a bit more, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit here. And I want to talk about your art just a little bit, if that's okay with Matthew.
Absolutely not. I don't want to hear a word about it. Yeah, please, of course.
Imagine. Okay, so if memory serves me correct, when it comes to the process of creating art's canvas in general, as opposed to literature and writing, or perhaps both, but your work does explore personal identity, memory, spaces that we occupy, and something I would love for you to expand on is narrative, or within the confines of a narrative structure. Could you define more what narrative structure is to the non-artists?
Yeah, for my practice, it was always something I was really interested in, the way, the viewer imparts meaning or takes it away. I had a prof that once explained it kind of as like a potluck lunch. Everyone kind of brings their own little bit and then takes away what they want from an exhibition. There is always going to be, exhibition texts and those little supplemental information. But I mean, we all still, we can be told something about an artwork and still kind of take something personal from it as well. So I've always been kind of fascinated with that. Kind of thinking about it in terms of my own work, that kind of developed out of, and it was kind of a grief tactic or for myself. I was in second year university. My closest friend passed away quite suddenly in a car accident, and obviously quite grief stricken, trying to figure out, the ways that, I can kind of navigate those feelings while still continuing with school. And arts and writing were a really great avenue for that, to be able to kind of take my mind away from it, or even just like decompartmentalize and just break it down little bit by bit. But one thing that I found really fascinating about that whole process was, in that kind of grieving and everyone's kind of that celebration of life, everyone's talking about, the person as they've gone, and you realize that nobody knows the same person when you really think about it. They all have these different experiences, different understandings. They all remember different events differently. And so I was really kind of fascinated by all of the many faces of the friends that I had, that people were describing, that I was like, I don't know that person. That's kind of interesting, right? And thinking that you knew someone so intimately. So I got really fascinated with that. And then so I started imparting, some different textual and audio elements into my work at that point. And really just kind of looking at ways to kind of impart meaning and have people take away these little tidbits and what they remember about a certain work, or the information that's given to them, and kind of explore that a little bit. So what I did was I had an artwork, or a self-portrait, and an audio component that was just on repeat and shuffle, giving away little I statements. So I would say something like, I don't like carrots, and it would kind of continue to go like, I have left and right socks, I'm a hell of a gardener, to like more outlandish stuff like, I'm a semi-habitual cocaine user. I'm not, but those little things, and just, trying to come up with really absurd things that I could say from my voice in this portrait that was being presented. And I think there was something like, there was like 2.5 hours, I think, of just random statements. And they were all just getting repeated at random. So nobody was going to sit there for 2.5 hours and listen to every single thing that was taken. So the idea was they would put the headphones on, be staring, because there was only, I think, about like 1.5 feet of cord. So you were basically right with the portrait. You couldn't move without taking the headphones off. And then, kind of the idea that no one's going to sit there probably longer than 5 minutes. So they're going to hear a bunch of random stuff, and what they remember about that is kind of going to inform their understanding of this person, right? So that's kind of this narrative structures that I kind of like. So you're kind of imparting that yourself. And I kind of continue to experiment with that a little bit, rather than having those the audio components. I started using text-based paintings as well to kind of explore that as well. Kind of like this it was basically like a word bank, the same kind of idea, these I statements with a portrait, and then you kind of pick and choose on this large scale grid of different statements, and whichever ones you kind of pick and chose, and kind of, I think a lot of people remembered very different ones. Still have people that I talk to about that exhibition, and they're like, oh yeah, I remember this part, and you know, they remember one of those but not another one, and it's really fascinating, and to see, you know, the ones that people remember. And yeah, I always found that really interesting and fascinating.
Yeah. Did you ever get, with the audio component, did you ever get someone who thought it was a challenge? They thought the actual test of the exhibition was sit through it all, the whole 2 hours.
Memorize them all?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did have a friend who was gallery sitting at the time, who I believe is the only person that actually sat there through it all and listened. At least she told me that. Really amazing artist. You should definitely check her out. Jordan Stewart does these amazing installation and performance-based works. Just honestly amazing. But yeah, it's kind of interesting if we're thinking about the way that, you know, that process into making art. And kind of like taking that curtain away. I kind of workshopped that piece a little bit when I was in my studio classes. And originally, I think it was only about 15 minutes long, the different things. And everyone was like, oh yeah, I listened to all of that. So I was like, oh no, I'm going to make it a challenge. I'm going to make it so unbearable that you're not going to want to sit there for 2.5 hours. And then too, I also just a kind of trick with people and kind of mess with them a little bit. I did put a couple repeats in there just to make them think that they heard everything. Just to be a little playful with it. But
do you remember how many individual statements you had?
There was hundreds, I think. Because yeah, I think there was a lot.
Yeah, I imagine each one takes like what, 5 seconds at the most. You had
Yeah,
2.5 hours of them.
Yeah, I would kind of, in doing that, I did start to really take my time in enunciating everything. Almost like those ASMR kind of meditation videos, that really slow speaking, breathe in, breathe out. So yeah, when I would say it, like, I have left and right socks, and then I would let there, and it would kind of fade in and out. So that stretched it out a little bit, but yeah, there was a lot.
Too many. When you say that, you know, you said nobody knows the same person, and to that extent, nobody knows the same person to their good values, and nobody knows the same person to their bad values. Both are biased and subjective based on the person, you know, and how you know them and their relationship to you, which can bring about a sense of pure rawness and humanity, and a sort of a dismantling of the senses to expose the true sense of self, kind of this grotesque here. I'll allow someone else to describe it a bit better. But I was on your website looking at your beautiful, beautiful artwork. Noticed that you were doing studying on Lucian Freud, an artist, I don't think to be confused with either the son of the psychoanalyst, but an artist to his own. And I wanted to know why his artwork was so raw. So I looked up quotes by him to kind of get more into his mind, and I came upon something that he said: full saturated colors have an emotional significance that I want to avoid. And that almost made me think, to an extent, perhaps he's just anti-emotionalism. He just does it, he just disregards it in debate. But did you decide to study his work because you agree with that mentality? Is that something you share as an artist? And what do you think sorry to ask in parts, but what do you believe is the emotional significance he's trying to avoid?
Ooh, well, I mean, I never want to try to think for another person. I mean, there's been a lot of articles written about Lucian Freud. From what I understand, he's probably not the nicest, greatest person to actually ever know or deal with. I think there's something like he has 15 or 16 legitimate or not even illegitimate children, just children, and he could give a like crap less about any of them.
Oh yes.
So
there's a lot like that.
There, yeah, I don't really know what he was trying to avoid. I know what spoke to me about his work was kind of I was really fascinated by the indexical quality of his work, where you can see every single brush stroke, or in case most of the time, palette knife work. And I was really fascinated by that because there was something so inherently physical, this presence, even though a lot of his works were quite small. I've never actually seen any in person, so I should admit that right off the bat. From photographs, you can really see, every movement that he makes and it's so deliberate and so, you can feel it. You're almost standing in front of the work, and you can almost mimic the paints being applied to the canvas just by looking at it. That was something that I was really always interested in, because I actually painted quite the opposite when I came through school. I was very meticulous. I wanted everything to look almost photorealistic. I wanted everything to have this, very soft, polished kind of look. And I could never take myself away from that. And so I was really just fascinated by that, and seeing, studying works at the AGO, between classes and stuff. Really, again, just seeing the artist's hands in a brush stroke, and it's just amazing when you really study those works, because when you break it down, instead of looking at the work as a whole, and you just focus on just like a little section over here, it almost kind of looks like an abstract work. It just looks like a lot of nothingness, because it is just, you see these movements, you see these motions of the brush strokes working, and it kind of is amazing how, as you step back, those things start to transform into, more cohesion. It's almost like this chaos, and then everything comes together as you kind of a chance to step back. That's what I was really fascinated with about his work in particular. I didn't really know much about him. In the years past, I've read more articles and stuff, and kind of, yeah,
I don't really want to look too much into Carl Jung either. So we just learn what they know, and then we don't look past it. There's a lot of them like that, a lot. But when I was thinking about that, full saturated colors have an emotional significance I want to avoid. I thought of an answer, and I didn't think it was thinking for himself. I figured the emotional significance was over-interpretation, or perhaps mismatched or misconstrued attached meaning to his artwork that he wanted to avoid, because most artists are egotistical. And I know, and perhaps given, the kind of personality, I remember when I was, well, this isn't about me, but story time, as a writer, for the longest time, I didn't want people to read my writing because I didn't want them to interpret it their way. I didn't want them to attach too much significance to it. Take it for what it is and don't worry about it. And so I think perhaps from artist to artist, I think maybe that's what he was getting at. But who knows? Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, isn't that the dream, that you take something and present it and it's exactly interpreted the way you wanted it? But
the dream.
It's kind of a Bob Ross kind of school of thought, but like those happy little accidents, the things that you maybe think that you're onto something, and it's the same work, but you're looking at it in one way, and then someone else looks at it in an entirely different way, and then it just shakes everything that you're doing, and you realize that, oh, I was missing something. I had my blinders on, and I was looking for this very specific thing. I wanted this very intentional meaning to happen, and then someone comes and goes, oh, well, have you thought about this? And you go, yes, I did. And you you came up with that amazing idea, and that was the intent all along. But
yeah.
At least that's been my perspective.
I'm really interested by the concept now of the variety of interpretations of art, because that's not exclusive to art. We all have confirmation biases for the entire universe, and it seems like that's the kind of thing that is being exploited at large by the internet as a whole, as an entity. That if we spam the website, so the World Wide Web, with enough information and enough different things, some of them are going to stick with the people who relate with them. And so I guess going back a little bit to your role with the gallery, is the interpretation, the individual interpretation of art, and through that, I guess the capacity to do that with information in general, something that you consciously teach through your role?
Yeah, I mean, what we always want to do is position the artist's voice and their meanings at the forefront of everything. We don't want to insert ourselves. I know we work with some really amazing artists, and the last thing that we need to have is, a cishet white guy who's in his early 30s, telling everyone what he thinks the work is about. It's really what the artist thinks the work is about at the first and foremost, and then really just having those conversations, allowing them to kind of flourish and see where they go. But always kind of keeping, the intent of the artist in mind. So having those conversations with different groups, kind of teasing things out and letting them kind of explore that through their own, not necessarily their own interpretation, but everyone, the best way for them to kind of relate to art or to a message or anything is to kind of internalize that a little bit, to kind of see themselves in it, is the best way that they can kind of, really empathize with a work, or, put themselves in that situation and really connect with it. So I do like to kind of tease that out a little bit and have them kind of think about, how a work maybe makes them feel, what comes into their heads when they look at a work, those kind of conversations, and then kind of start very, very, diverse, and then kind of start to bring it back into what the artist was going for. But at the same time, those conversations, they can be so, kind of illuminating. And I often actually share a lot of those conversations with the artists themselves, and sometimes they're just, really amazed with their, the things that people come back with, and they look at their work and they're like, wow, I didn't even think about it like that, or, oh, that's really interesting. I was kind of influenced by this artist, or I was influenced by this kind of way of thinking, and that's what kind of continued into my work. And people can pick up on those little bits and those little nuances and kind of work within those frames. But yeah, again, a little long-winded way of saying, really, we try to put the artist's voice and their perspective and experiences first, and then kind of guide people through that basically, yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah. So has there been a conversation that you can remember that was a turning point for your career? You could have a conversation with a mentor, an artist friend. Was there anything that was said to you in a process of sharing and collaboration that really flipped a switch and started a trajectory of anything? It didn't have to be necessarily a career, of anything, really.
Yeah, I mean, I would say everything in my life has been from some sort of conversation here or there. I mean, that kind of idea that we're not so much unlike art, right? I mean, we kind of pick and choose what we like and from what we experience, and kind of work from there. I mean, some of us are really privileged to be able to, chase after those dreams and those goals, and, being positions to be able to actually actualize those. But yeah, in terms of myself, looking back, visual arts was always something that I was just enamored with, starting, I don't even remember when I first started it, but I actually found one of my old kindergarten report cards, and all it talked about was how I like to tell stories, and I, was really helpful with the other kids. And anytime any chance that I got, I was always in the back painting, usually Simpsons characters or something like that. So I find it really funny in that sense. But actually, there's a really great. The reason why I had my old kindergarten report card is I was actually lucky to my mom saved it, which was, why, but she did. But I actually went seeking to find it after I was in Teachers College. One of my associate teachers, who was really amazing, actually my first one, told me that anything you want to know about a person, you can learn about by reading their kindergarten report card. And I thought it was just a horrible thing. I'm like, there's no way, that's impossible. And so I went and I looked, and yeah, it was scarily on the nose. And so I don't know if it's one of those, that's who I've always been, and I haven't really changed much since I was like 5 years old, or if I kind of was pushed in that direction because everyone saw that report card, at least teachers, and then kind of continue to nurture those different gifts. I don't know, but yeah, and so I've always just been really interested in, I was always a drawer. Painting I never did until high school. I would used to sit whenever I'd visit my dad, I'd sit at the dining room table and just draw and draw and draw. And then, I actually, in high school, I had a bit of a rough go. Most people do, but I actually ended up dropping out for a couple years. I had to go through, some alternative education programs, and eventually got back into high school. But through that's where I kind of really developed a love for education, and that wanting to kind of, be the teacher that, I maybe didn't have growing up, and to be able to, kind of pay that forward. So that's how I kind of got into education. But then I thought, how am I going to ever become a teacher? And so, because how am I going to get into university? And if I get into university, what am I going to study? And so I kind of, took a reassessment, looked back and saw, I've always loved to write. And I really love to draw, but there weren't any writing programs in my high school, really. But we did have a really great arts program. So I went through there, got the credits, and then went to Sheridan for a art fundamentals certificate, hoping to, bridge into a university program. I couldn't do that. So I was taking online high school classes while I was there doing that. And then eventually got into U of T, but then what do I do for my second? Because you had to, for a high school teacher, we had to have 2 teachables. So I had art, and then what do I do? I was always really strong at English. Even looking back in high school, I did have a teacher who really encouraged me. One of our final assignments was a memoir assignment, and most of it was just, take a picture and describe it. And I just wrote stories. I wrote a little short story collection just on a whim, just really enjoyed it. And that encouragement that I got from him was really exciting. And but again, those, you kind of go with these best laid plans, and things always change. When I went, I actually wanted to be a psychology major as well, but I didn't have the math credits that I needed to continue on with that. So I was taking English and art, and then when my friend passed away, I didn't get all the credits that I needed that year, so I ended up doing summer classes. And in that is when I took a professional writing class, my first one, and I had an amazing prof, and he again really encouraged me. I think so yeah, the question that you had, any conversations, I would say growing up always with visual arts, people always encouraged me. Education was definitely, while I was at one of those alternative education centers, working through, one of the teachers actually took a real interest and had me, said that you could do this. You're really, I can't remember exactly what he said, which is so bad, but yeah, it was more or less than what he said, but just the approach that he had. And then, yeah, one of my first writing class, sitting in my professor's office as he was reading through one of my stories, and he turned and he said, "Okay, so when are you going to write your novel?" And I was like, "Okay, maybe I'm doing something right here." So yeah, and then just through that, and I've just been lucky to just kind of be blessed by meeting so many amazing people and having so many opportunities that I definitely never planned for, could never have planned for most of them. And I think that's also kind of why I have so many, diverse, interests, and I'm doing a little bit of everything is because I've always been open to the periphery. So I've always been wanting to be a teacher, and that was always my goal, but everything kind of came up in the periphery, and I'd kind of veer and kind of see what was going on there. And that's how it's kind of been, and I've been lucky to be in the position that I am. And yeah, just getting in with the gallery and then kind of continuing there, learning how to do some exhibition installation, doing some contract work, eventually getting on as a visitor services receptionist, dealing with the public, getting a chance to work in communications with them as well. And then now just being so lucky to be in the education position. It's been a pretty crazy wild ride, and never could have planned for any of it to happen the way it did. And yeah, but again, it's always been the people around me that have really pushed me and helped me along. And I do hope that I can finally, get the feet under me to feel comfortable, because right now you always feel like and I think it's mostly just that sense of COVIDness of, nothing is solid underneath us right now, it feels like. But that's always been the goal, is to get to a place where then I can, turn around and help the next person along, and this role has actually been able to help do that. I mean, being able to work with some amazing instructors through this, bringing in people, who might not have thought about instructing with the gallery, trying to build those connections through those community partnerships. And so far, it's been a really amazing experience.
Do you want to talk about the current, so you have a program happening, like an actual real life program happening in real time at the end of August, that I was going to be a part of. Unfortunately, I can't attend any longer, but it's called the Graphic Novels and Zines Program for Teens.
Yeah, that kind of really spread it out of just looking at what I love about everything, and trying to find a program that can really resonate with that demographic. I mean, that's 13 to 16 year age, it's really notoriously difficult to reach out to and get that kind of enrollment in, and trying to find ways to connect with them. And in my time through Teachers College and working in the with Kawartha Pine Ridge School Board as a occasional teacher, getting able to connect with the students, they have such rich, amazing stories, and they're all so creative in the ones that I've had a chance to meet, but they lack that opportunity to really share in a very comfortable, safe space. I mean, every kid in an art class has an amazing sketchbook. Not every kid, I mean, some are just there for the credit, but I mean, and I mean, in all honesty, I was actually that kid for grade 9 art. I was just there for the credit, and yeah, it's, things can change, right? But yeah, just to be able to connect with them, and they all have such an amazing story. And I think the problem with that age group, and I think it's a lot of people as well, is everyone already thinks that the story's already been told, so what's the point in doing it? And you can say that and you ask that question, but every time you hear a new love song or a breakup song, or see a new painting of a sunset, or the new Instagram photo of a bowl of chicken noodle soup or something, you go, oh, that's amazing, and I want that, or I want to connect with that, or you feel an emotion. And it's the same story over and over again, but it's not your story. You didn't tell that. And to be able to have that opportunity to try to connect with that was kind of the impetus behind that program. Is I really wanted to use my skill sets, work with people that I have connected with. So yeah, yourself, Adriana, to work with, developing what it's like to build a publication from start to finish, working with an amazing illustrator, character designer. I can't list everything that this amazing person has done. Leah Hensel Williams, an incredible person that I was lucky to meet when my art fundamentals year at Sheridan, to be able to work with her and connect with her on this as well, to kind of give, that opportunity for people to understand what it's like to, develop a character, to tell that story, to, create this series of graphic novels, and what, how she imparts her experiences and how that shaped what she's doing. So that's kind of, the whole point of that program, is to kind of get into that. And that's what we're really excited about. And it's one of those programs that we kind of want to continue with as we kind of, not just this summer, and kind of right through. The other thing that we're also doing, which is I think really exciting, is we're developing I shouldn't even say developing, we're launching an artist mentorship program that's happening all. So this is one of those things that we really noticed, this 14, basically once you reach 14, there's very few programming options that aren't just for volunteer based. You can volunteer at an art gallery, you can volunteer doing, pretty much anything, but there's not a lot of programs developed specifically for you. So to kind of mind that gap, but also kind of create some opportunities to develop some professional skills as well, because we noticed that Peterborough has such an amazing, rich arts community, as I mentioned, and we have this amazing constant cohorts of youth that are coming up, and not having those opportunities, not being able to, necessarily exhibit their work or connect with a larger network of artists and arts professionals. So this program is designed to, offer portfolio developments, or not even portfolio developments, but reviews for people that are looking to, apply to post-secondary education, or even just looking to kind of get some feedback. That's kind of age 16 to 19 age there. So basically, senior level high school students in Peterborough here. And then it kind of continues on into an open call where they're able to apply, and if selected, working with an artist mentor to develop a group exhibition that will happen at the art gallery. Learning it from start to finish, what it takes to develop an exhibition, what it takes to develop, a cohesive body of work, working in collaboration with other artists. Part of that will also continue to work with myself and the curator to actually mount the exhibition. So they'll learn, how to develop exhibition texts, how to actually install their own exhibition, how to develop an outreach program as well, to kind of bridge this, that lack of opportunity and those very few and far between experiences for youth to kind of gain that professional credential, as well as, because they will have an exhibition. So, a line on their CV exhibiting at a regional art gallery as well. And also their first professional credit. It would be, they will get paid for their exhibition as well as through artist fees based on the CARFAC rates, which, we really highlighted and saw that need for us to step up and have that opportunity for kids and youth to see that it's not just, just how, sometimes not every school has the opportunity to have to show and exhibit their work, and sometimes it might just be, in the hallway, but actually having that opportunity to have a professionally mounted exhibition, have a professional exhibition credit to your name before you go to university, is just going to give these kids a huge leg up. And that's kind of we're really doing. We want to support our community, and we see all of these amazing people coming back and, you know, going out to different communities and then coming back and sharing what they have. Even if they're not, you know, living in Peterborough, we do see many artists come back that have reached, you know, national recognition. We had William Robinson, who was shortlisted, or I think he was shortlisted for the Soviet Art Award a couple of years ago. Peterborough, born and raised, went through the integrated arts program here, and then just had an exhibition that same year that he was shortlisted for the Soviet Art Awards at ArtSpace. And to be able to develop that, send these amazing people out and then still have that connection is, you know, just going to make the arts community even stronger. And yeah, how can you be excited about that?
That's great. So you clearly you identified an opportunity to provide experience for young artists, because that's something that's lacking for them. And that's a really excellent avenue that you, as a part of a gallery and an organization, can take. For the average person, for the sibling or the parent or the friend, what kind of opportunities do you think, or missteps that we make, are there in encouraging young artists?
I think there's always this presumption that everything has to be done for a reason, and really the only reason to make art is to make art. And I think so often that's forgotten about. I mean, there's not a ton that you can do aside from, you know, exposing people to arts and getting them engaged, having that chance to develop and build those works. Because there is something that's so inherent. We reach a certain age and it's almost like a switch flips in our head, and all of a sudden, we're 5 years old, and anyone who on the street who we can stop and to show our, you know, picture, we will. And then we hit, you know, a certain age, and then we won't show even our closest friends or family any work that we're doing. And it's a really challenging thing. And I think it can be difficult to break out of that, because there is that voice inside your head saying maybe it's not good enough. And, you know, really that voice should say, does that even matter? Did you make something? That's amazing. And, you know, I think what a lot of people do when they try to encourage is like, oh, you should try to sell that, or you should, and it kind of creates this different mentality of what art is. And it's just about creating. It's just about being creative. It doesn't have to have any other purpose. Are there people who, you know, make a living doing that? Absolutely. And, you know, we can support and show and connect you with those people through our programs. But does it have to be that? No. And that's kind of what's so exciting. I mean, in my time, leading studio programs, they're always so amazing and so fun, because the little kids are always just super enthusiastic, and that's just always amazing. And you're never going to, you know, really get away from that. And that's just, they're just so excited, and that's amazing. But some of my favorite groups are definitely the adult groups, because you get them in and they're so reluctant to even pick up a pencil or charcoal or anything. And I like to do a program like about portraits, especially. Because that's even more daunting. We're going to do portraits of people. And then, you know, just breaking down those barriers, having fun with that. Usually do like some blind contour sessions, which everyone is terrible at, and that's the point. And it's just about making marks. And by the end of it, you have people who, you know, are saying, oh, I'm terrible, I can't draw a stick figure, to laughing and having fun and being like, look what I made. And, you know, I've seen groups, you know, 17-year-olds doing that, and, you know, 90-plus-year-olds doing that, who, you know, have lived their whole life saying, I can't do this, and then leaving and being like, look what I made. And, you know, that's really what it's all about. And that's what's so exciting. So yeah, to answer your question, I don't really know if there's any one way you can do it, but I think just having people know, and just understanding that just creating and making something is the point. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be bad. It just has to be made in the first place. And that's really all it is.
Art should be fun.
Art should be fun. So
Absolutely.
would you say that the definitions of success would vary from artist to artist? And no matter what the definition, none are moot, all are valid, because all are artists, and artists can then define the definition themselves, perhaps? Artistic poetic license?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's experience is valid, right? And it's no different than the way we look at and create art. So, you know, if I make something a certain way and I define art a very specific way, then that's, to me, that is real, that is valid. Some people are going to, you know, hear that my definition of making art is just doing it as, oh, maybe, you know, maybe that's an idealistic, romantic view of just, you know, or simplistic view of what art is. But, you know, other people are going to hear that and resonate with it as well. And I think that's what's kind of amazing about art, is because it is, you know, that idea, anyone can do it. I mean, that's the amazing part of Ratatouille, right? Like, that's one of my favorite movies. Just saw it recently. So in case anyone caught that reference, if you didn't, I just pointed it out very clearly. Anyone can make art, and because that's, you just make something and it can be art, and that's the whole point of it, where there doesn't have a monetary reason behind it. It's just, you created something, and how amazing is that?
Anyone can make art, but it's the story that monetizes it. Anyone can make art, but to sell any piece of shit that you made for a large amount of money and to get people sold, that takes storytelling.
Yeah.
You got to really sell a blank canvas for $1 million. You really got to put a story next to it. So, I mean, anyone can make anything, call it art, but then tangible definitions of success might just start coming into play. And that's where you get the stigmatization of artists. It's why does success have to be monetary? Can I not measure it by enjoyment? Because I got out of bed today? That's simple enough, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, everyone loves a story, right? It's Thomas King that says, stories, that's all we are. And, you know, I've always been in love with his work, and, you know, I could not recommend. I think you can read or listen to his lecture series on YouTube. I would definitely do it. He's just a person, but yeah, that idea, the stories, that's all we are. And it really kind of comes back to, you know, that same thing that with my art and the way that it kind of, you know, came to be, is that idea of stories. There were so many different conflicting stories that I was hearing and being told, and each one of them was valid, and each one of them made up a person who was whole and complete, and wholly different than the one that I had, you know, developed and thought about in my mind. And, you know, people love a good story. I mean, you're not going to sell anything without a good story. You know, have commercials and, you know, all of those things, right?
And the Bible. No, sorry. No.
So Andrew, thinking about some of the people we just described, the artistic folks who are not destined to be professional artists for one reason or another, and speaking as somebody who has found a really interesting space in the world of art to operate, are there any fields or interesting jobs or alternatives into the art world that aren't being specifically a professional artist that you can think of off the top of your head for those kinds of artistic but not artist types?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different avenues into that. You know, I've been privileged to work with some really amazing arts administrators, people who, you know, love art, but, you know, maybe don't feel confident, or, you know, just never found the opportunities to be able to make, you know, art making a viable career path. But to be able to support the arts through that by either, you know, finding community projects to develop and, you know, build exhibition opportunities for other people. Curation is another one that a lot of people do look into as well. I would say for people who are just looking at, they want to work with their hands, I can't say, the value of knowing how to use a drill and being able to install art is an amazing, valuable experience. And I'm lucky that I've been able to have that. Art handling is, it's fun. You get to actually be tactile, work with the actual artwork, be able to touch it. I mean, you're not touching the face of the artwork or anything, but you're actually handling art and in ways that, the general public never will. And also, in my experience working as an art installer, getting the chance to have those conversations with the artists themselves. I mean, just, I've been so blessed to be in the position that I am, but working in this position hasn't afforded me a lot of time to be able to, devote to my own visual arts and writing practice. But through those connections, every time I get the chance to talk to an artist, either assisting with, an exhibition that we're getting ready to mount, working with them to coordinate getting the artwork on site, working with them to develop programming, or even just while they're on site, putting on the exhibition, getting the chance to actually have those conversations to get that insight, that one-on-one with an artist is just incredible. And it just makes me want to make it. I always come home every day and I'm just like, yes, I want to do this. And then I'm usually too tired, but that's, what it is. But I think there's those paths. There's also, less traditional paths, I guess, in a sense, where it starts to take away from less like traditional art making and more, digital art making. So you can graphic design, fabrication design. There's a lot of those different areas. If you're really mathematically inclined, I'm not as much as I would like, but engineering starts to come into it. Also, if you have a really good understanding of science and chemistry, the work that people do as art conservators I find that be amazing and incredible. And then in all honesty, just a lot of artists too also teach. They work with people to get them excited about art making as well. It's a very tactile way to be engaged with what you're doing, kind of work through your own practice, but also get people engaged in working in that way. And then also a lot of artists who kind of I think just about every town has at least two of them. Artists that like to do what they do, but supplement that with framing, with the framing business as well. And then also photography. I think, working with artists, it's one thing that we always see is, the quality of images, could always be, not always be better, but I myself, I'm terrible at taking images of my own work. And I wish I always wanted, every time I go to do it, I have to teach myself how to do it again. And I just, I could, just hire someone to take all of the pictures for me. So being able to do that leads to other amazing opportunities. A lot of institutions are digitizing their work right now. So getting that ready for the different websites or digital capacities. Once you actually start to get in it, you just see how endless the opportunities really are. It's the problem is, everyone just sees, that romantic view of the artist at their easel and, suffering for their arts. But really that's only just like this small sliver of what's actually there. And it's pretty incredible.
Precisely. And that brings it back to the beginning of the conversation, that the value of making the artist life conscious and known, the nitty gritty of it. It's very valuable, because there is a precise romanticization of what is very hard work. If you know what you're looking for, if you know the right terminology, if you know the signs to look for, if you know the roads to go, if you know what to see, you'll see the hard work and the drive and the passion that comes behind it, and the value, the monetary value. And I said this previously in previous podcasts, but art is essential art needs to be funded. Art programs need to be in post-secondary institutions, in secondary institutions, elementary institutions, anywhere where there are creative and eager minds, because art is linked with science much. It's the same as spirituality and science. They're partners in crime. And again, art sparks curiosity. And what does curiosity spark? Questioning. And what does questioning, that which is accepted, spark? Change, different ways of thought, innovation. Art is vital, and it's just as vital as maths, just as vital as science. Yes, art.
Hey, let me bridge off that, Andrew, because Adriana is making a really interesting and important point. As an art educator, obviously both are a priority of the two following, but is one, do you focus on one more than the other between teaching the skills necessary to create art versus treating art as a way of thinking?
I mean, it would really depend on the type of program. I mean, I would traditionally lean towards the second, as a way of thinking. There's so much problem solving that needs to be worked through when you're making, is even painting, learning how to, mix colors. But I'm always still partial to that idea. You need to know the rules to break the rules a little bit. That kind of, it's kind of that understanding of like, if you don't know what parameters that you're in, or if you don't have the mechanism for understanding or perceiving the cage that you're in, then you're not going to be able to understand what could be out there. And so those tools of understanding how to mix paints, how to properly draw, shading, the different techniques are really essential to understand the how-tos, because they're basically tools to understand how then you can start to break those. So what I find is a lot of people, if you kind of just go here, just do whatever, we're thinking about art, we're thinking outside the box. It's really hard for a lot of people to get started because it's just, the possibilities are endless. And when it's endless, it's hard to even focus or perceive anything, right? So when you have those tools and you can start to, you have something to kind of fill in those voids and start to anchor everything that's around you, it starts to be able to, be easier to kind of jump along and, start to branch out. Actually, one of the instructor that is doing the virtual camps this week, her name's Cassandra Lee, actually made this really amazing point to the class today, or I think it was yesterday actually. So they all got a sketchbook to go along with their materials kits, and she mentioned how the first page she always gives it a title. So she had one notebook she had just moved and got a haircut. So the title of that sketchbook was New Home, New Hair, and by Cassandra Lee. And the reason why she did that is because she said that she always finds it so intimidating when you open up an entire book and nothing is there. But for her, she knows what the first page is always going to be. And from there, it takes away the stress of, oh, what am I going to put in this? It's like, well, I'm already started. I know I've got one. And then she builds off from there. And I always find that really interesting and kind of a fascinating idea. So when she said that, I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, that's amazing.
That's really, really brilliant. And I remember being 14, 15, 16, 17, and I was very anti-authoritarian. I was bouncing off the walls. I was very defiant, and I was questioning. I was a little troublemaker, but I like to keep to a point. Like, I didn't have a fake ID, but I questioned the priest kind of thing. Like, it was a very fine line. And so, but I remember the biggest thing, the common denominator between all my subjects, I was restless, defiant, until the teacher explained why. I think more important than how to do something is, why am I doing this? Give me context, give me a reason, so I'm not your mindless sheep going towards an infinite direction where I don't know where I'm going. Give me a why. And I think many kids I find that many kids who resist art programs come from turbulent homes, because they can't go to art in school and then come home and practice it because they're too busy being yelled at. They can't practice art if there's chaos going on. So it's this disconnect. So I feel like perhaps, and there might be a psychological component, but when you're dealing with that age group, not all, some kids, and I can kind of relate to them. Some are in a way, it's why am I doing this? Give me a why, because I don't trust it. Why am I spending my time on this? So it is daunting to open up a book and see nothing, because it's like, what am I supposed, why? Because even at 3, 4, 5, so you remember your father's getting mad at you. That's enough. No more why. I don't want to know. Stop asking me why, or your mom's or your brother. They just didn't want to answer you anymore. But that never goes away. And especially if we're rejected and we can't ask why, and that we have to repress that. We want to know why, but we can't ask. Like, that's so just hearing what you said and just kind of remembering, putting myself in the shoes of the kids. I'm like, yeah, the education, you need compassionate people like the teachers that you were discussing who does that, because that's what makes the education system great. So I'm happy that she exists, is my point.
Along with giving you that sort of purpose for the notebook and making it a little bit less daunting, is it an important thing just to take that first step? Is that what holds people back, you think, at least some people, that the notion of creating art is such a daunting and intimidating thing unto itself, that just that first step will get you going?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what the crux of it is for anything. It's not so much about it's intimidating to, the art itself is intimidating. I think for everyone, it's the idea that I don't know, and that's what's intimidating. So many people are so reluctant to open up and be like, yeah, I don't know, so I'm going to learn about this, or teach me about this, or, yeah, I'm not going to be an expert at this, and I have zero idea what I'm doing, and that's okay. And a lot of people, it's really intimidating. You don't know where to start. You don't know what you don't know. You don't even know what you could know, or where, like, any of that kind of
You
stuff.
don't know why you have to know it.
Yeah, it's and I think for a lot of kids, it's always the ones that are reluctant to pick up a paintbrush or anything like that. It's not always necessarily that their homes are turbulent. In a lot of cases it can be. I mean, there is I face it a lot. There's a inherent toxic masculinity when it comes to art making and being a cis-het white dude. I mean, like, growing up,
Yeah,
the amount of times that people called me the F like gay slur because I was in an art class in high school. I mean, I played football, I love hockey, I did everything that you're supposed to do to be masculine, but I enjoyed art, and so there was this inherent toxic masculinity of those things don't add up. But really, I think it all stems back from it's a fear of not knowing, and if you don't know, it can be it's kind of like an imagination. I don't know if that idea, like my mom used to do this a lot when I was a kid. She would be like, don't make me come in there. You don't know what's going to happen next, or you won't like what happens if I come in there. She would never say anything bad, anything. It was never actually really threatening, but my little mind would just build it like, oh, what's she going to do? Is she going to come in with a witch and a vampire? And, and like my mind would develop all of these things that would, I couldn't control, and like would spiral out. And I think that not knowing, people, because they don't know, they start to get really afraid, and then they start to make up all of these more elaborate excuses as to why they shouldn't or why they can't. And I find that happens a lot, seeing that with a lot of school groups that come in, a lot of the you can tell if they're not engaged. Sometimes their parents are there, and their parents, are a little afraid because they don't know the answers. The kid will ask them about what's this artwork mean, and they go, I don't know.
True.
That itself can be intimidating, right? And so it's not necessarily a turbulent home or anything. It's just about that. They don't know how to best support their kids because they don't know the answers, right? I mean, I look forward to when I have kids and, some math homework. I'm going to be really scared when they bring that home because I don't know the best way to.
Yeah, I totally get that. Even they say, I had an old friend, I'm not friends with her anymore, but her parents were very, they're like a Gestapo. They were very stern and strict, and she turned into a great storyteller because she had to learn how to lie. So it doesn't necessarily need to be, she's lying. Can lie through her teeth. Great storyteller because of these issues. And no, it doesn't necessarily have to do with turbulence. Because I remember I would bring home a math test and would have like 60% on it. And my father would be like, oh, good, that's better than what I could do. So turbulence comes in different ways. But again, it's up to the child to understand within themselves and be open to see within themselves when somebody like yourself, when you were going through your times in your adolescence and you had people around you saying, hey, there's a spark in there. Do you see it? Because you should. Do you see it? Because you should. We can see it all we want, but do you? And you almost had me in tears because I was just so, I don't know you, but I was like proud because I'm like, yeah, man, he did it. He got to the other side. Yeah. Because that's because many people will hear that about themselves and not believe. They won't work on it. And so I find your story very admirable and very commendable. And yeah, I'm really glad that we were able to hear about it because again, no, it doesn't, you can't say specifically what a child is dealing with, but unfortunately arts is so turbulent in and of itself, and the arts is so stigmatized in and of itself that it does streamline into, again, what you said, the society's view of it, the toxic masculinity, even things as simple and generic as that are so impactful. So I'm glad you did bring it up because I myself kind of forgot about that. And so it's unfortunate that you have to deal with it, but it's also, again, just I hope that changes. And I hope that there are steps in the artist community towards, making that mentality and the stigmatization of the arts. I hope it becomes obsolete. That's what it deserves, Yeah.
Yeah, it would definitely be nice. I mean, I think, it just boils down to that idea that, to be free to create, to be free to learn, and, be free to make mistakes. And I think so many people are afraid to do that. And, I think that's, if we can start to move towards that, I think in so many different ways, not just in the arts, but in so many different ways in our lives, we'll just be better. I mean, and as you said too about that, why do we do these? Why, thinking about, kids as they start to learn to self-regulate, it's like, I am really angry and I'm really upset. And then eventually it's like, okay, but why? And then eventually you learn, oh, maybe I'm tired. Maybe I'm hungry, those things as we get older. And it's that exploration of, understanding the whys we do. Why do we do these things? And why do I feel the need to create? Because I do. It's, how can, to me, I know that not everyone has that same mentality, but, how can you not want to create something? I mean, I think everyone still has that. I mean, my grandfather was never really the creative type, GM worker, from, quit school in grade 10 to, start the factory the next day. And even with that, like, he still was always trying to do something creative, whether he wanted to admit that it was this burning desire within him or not, or, maybe it's just a human necessity to create. But even little things like he would make his own fishing lures, even in the garden, he would always develop these he'd make his own tomato nets, and he even created these, they were the weirdest little things. They were wind spinners, basically. He events, and it was like, you know, Sylvester the cat with like the wings that would pick, or legs that would pick up the wind, and they would just and he would just make those, and they were just amazing. And
I love old white man. Sorry, was he like super waspy?
No, the thing, yeah, like,
Because he reminds me a lot of my father. Sorry, yeah. Like,
I mean, like the stories that, yeah, my grandfather would tell about like growing up, they were quite liberal for their day. I mean, now there's some stuff you're like, you shouldn't say that, Grandpa. But like, you know, some of the stuff growing up, like it was just about getting by, I think, for them. It didn't matter, you know, nothing else mattered. It was just about getting by, you know, the people around you, your family, your community. That was what was important, and making sure that everyone got, you know, wasn't without. And I think that's really where he started with that. And yeah, but there was still that burning desire to create. Even my grandmother, you know, knitting as she's watching the news, those kinds of things. And that's about as waspy as you can get, just that description. But you know, I think that really speaks a lot. There's something that's, you know, whether we want to admit it, there's always that drive to be creative and to create something. And yeah, it's really interesting.
on the topic of your family, Ihamaki, this might be, you can't say it, but what is that? Is it Finnish? Is that why you go to Finland all the time?
Yeah, so that, it is Finnish.
Right.
When he was, I think, 4 or 5, came over with his uncle and settled in Sudbury. And there's, I think there's a few Ihamakis up there, and there's a large Finnish population up there. But it is Finnish. But I mean, it's really interesting. The name itself it's kind of an interesting one. I remember once I was actually in university, I had a professor. His name was Mark Crimmins, one of my favorite professors. That idea of, you know, the storytelling aspect. He would, you know, we were talking about the concept of mimesis, and I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of that. But this idea of, you know, the divine creation and everything else is a copy, you know, Plato's allegory of the cave, that kind of idea. And he related by telling a story about going to a Waffle House, and about how the picture on the menu was the exact picture that he thought that was the quintessential image of what waffles were, and when they came out they weren't the same. And just that idea of storytelling. I'm kind of going on a tangent there, but he lived in Japan for a number of years. And one day, one of the classes, I had submitted a paper and he hadn't had a chance to mark it, so he was like, "Oh, come with me to my office, I'll grab it for you." And then he ended up marking it in front of me, which for a first-year university student is about one of the most absolute nerve-wracking experiences possible. But we ended up having a really great conversation, which kind of really stemmed a great relationship. I mean, he was one of the amazing supports that I had when my friend passed away in second year. You know, took me aside and, you know, had some really good conversations about his experiences with similar things, and, you know, really owe a lot to that man. He was really amazing. But back to the story. I keep going on these things. Having been living in Japan for numerous years, he did the same thing you kind of did, like, Ihamaki, what? And then he started telling me what it meant in Japanese, because he thought it was Japanese. And
it sounds Japanese, yeah.
It does sound very Japanese. And I can't even remember exactly what he said. I believe Iha was beautiful, I think. And Maki meaning well, I think. That could be very off, but that's how my memory serves. He would have known, he would have said exactly what it actually meant, and I could be so off. And that's just another facet of what makes memory and stories so amazing, is because, we remember things very specifically, and they could be completely wrong. But having my professor telling me what my name meant in Japanese, and me having to be like, "Oh, that's interesting," but no.
I am one of their very select outports. Do I look Japanese? But again, yeah, because the place you're going to in Finland even sounds Japanese itself. How do you pronounce it? The residency. It's Takahuti. How do you
Yeah,
pronounce that?
Takahuti. Yeah, it's an artist residency in Tampere, Finland.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that one specifically because the last residency that I went to was the fish factory in Stadafjörður, Iceland, which was an amazing opportunity, amazing place to go. Some of the kindest, most incredible people that run that. Shout out to Vinny, Una, and Rosa. But also the people that I met there were really amazing too. And yeah, I had the really amazing privilege of meeting a wonderful person named Asi, who was actually who lived in, was from Tampere, actually, yeah, it was an interesting story. So on my first day there, as I was flying over, my grandfather, Walter Ihamaki, actually passed away. So that connection. So I basically got off the plane, was driving to the residency, and got the text from my mom saying that he had passed. And to be able to have that connection to actually speak to Asi and learn a little bit more about, Finnish culture. Her father was a huge history buff. So she had mentioned and been talking to him about, I met this, Canadian Finnish guy, and, this is his last name. He doesn't really know much about, Finland. And so he was able to, kind of, because a lot of the ancestry records and stuff are either a lot of them were lost. There was a lot of, I think in the Second World War, there was a lot of fires and a lot of those kinds of things. So a lot of those records got lost, and a lot of the ones that exist are in Finnish, and, it's a very difficult language to learn. So through those conversations, she was able to kind of, tell me and kind of point to me that the Ihamaki family kind of grew out of this one province. Then the major metropolitan area from that province was actually for us. So to be able to have that connection was kind of almost serendipitous. It was pretty amazing. And so from that, wanting to go there, to be able to kind of go back and visit, because I don't think my grandfather had a chance to since before I was born, and I don't think my dad ever had the chance before he passed away either. And so to be able to have that opportunity, to get that opportunity through art is even more incredible, because both of them were really instrumental in supporting that too. I mean, as I said, whenever I visited my dad, I would just be plunked down at the dining room table, just, drawing and drawing and drawing. And my grandpa would always, challenge me, "Oh, hey, do you know how to draw a duck?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I know how to draw a duck." And draw a duck and those kinds of things, right? So
Grandpas are always so elegantly aggressive to their grandchildren. Like, they're kind, but they're always a little draw a duck. Let's see if we can do it.
Bet you can't.
Screw you, Grandpa.
What kind of son you're raising? You can't draw a duck. Sorry.
But yeah, to be able to have that opportunity to kind of go over and visit and kind of, connect with that, I think it's really amazing. The fact that it kind of comes full circle, and then being able to have that opportunity through art is, it's pretty amazing.
You use the right word, serendipitous. That is absolutely full circle. It's beautiful. Right? Like, yeah. And I was going to ask, are you excited? But that's the very first thing you said. You're like, and I'm excited for it. So that's amazing. When are you going? 2022?
Yeah, fall 2022. I still have to get the exact dates figured out, just with work schedule and all of that stuff. But
of course.
It's in the works, and it's quite exciting.
Of course. Yeah. And then I'm sure you'll have lots of pictures and stories to put in front of everyone's faces when you're back. Look what I did, like the 5-year-old and all of us.
Yeah, you're gonna need a bigger fridge.
You need a bigger fridge.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things that whenever someone comes over, they're always shocked because they don't actually have really much of anything of my own work on the walls, but I'm already out of space already. So this room's a little bare, but every other wall in the house is covered with something, and a few of it's mine because I don't know. I just don't like to hang up most of my stuff. And I think the stuff that I've gotten from everyone else or picked up over the years is a lot more important and
Yeah.
interesting, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a very good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
It's important for community. Matt, is there anything you wanted to say?
Just the bigger fridge idea made me think that the Peterborough Art Gallery should have a large magnetic fridge upon which children can put their work when they come in for the day. Or
should
the
be,
studio
yeah.
folks can hang their work when they're done.
Should be an installation, yeah.
Yeah, we've done some pretty cool interactive stuff in the past. I mean, pre-COVID, we had this exhibition by, again, I always say an amazing artist. They're all amazing. It blows me away every time, I get a chance to meet a new person and get a chance to experience their work. But Eugenie Fernandez was the artist in the main gallery exhibition. She's incredible. So is her partner, Henry, as well. So she's really does a lot of there was these abstract paintings and each one of them was a different words and went through the alphabet in a sense. So A was I can't remember the letters, but abstract words, not even just like A is apple, it was like asymmetry or
Aloysius.
Yeah, something that you wouldn't necessarily pick up. That's the word I'm going to go with. But and then trying to create works that kind of spoke to that word. And we were able to get this really amazing felt wall in the gallery that people were able to kind of contribute to over the course of the exhibition. Again, it was really a kind of amazing insight into how people work. So many people would just use like this little small section and they would cut all these little tiny pieces and you would look and there'd be this, family scene of like 5 people and a dog, but it would be the size of a baseball. And then, the rest of it would be, some kid wrote his name and it's Adam across the whole. And then another kid would come in and be like, no, I don't like any of this, and just tear it all down. And it was such an interesting insight to see all of that. And but yeah, to have that interactive thing, it would be cool if we had like a giant magnetic fridge or something, just like put your artwork up. I think that if anyone's looking for a public art idea, I think that's giant fridge.
Heard it here first. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah. One last sort of less fun question, I guess. We were talking earlier about the difficulty in being able to admit that you don't know, and how challenging that can be for parents as well as young artists and old artists. For those parents specifically, or siblings or guardians or whoever, who want to foster and help to build those basic skills and the framework that's needed to build off, like you were saying, that box that you need to be in. Are there any, obviously you are a resource and your gallery is a resource with your education program, but are there any resources that you can think of that are easily accessible to the average person to help foster that in the youth?
I mean, there's a lot of amazing organizations out there that are doing a lot of great work, and just about every gallery has some sort of online programming that's free and accessible. A lot of them do outreach stuff as well. Like I know for our gallery, we do Family Sundays, which is a free event for all families and anyone to show up, get a chance to make some art, see the exhibitions, no commitment, nothing, just show up and enjoy it. I think for a lot of that, what I also see is for parents to kind of, so many times what we see come in is there's a school group that comes in and they get a chance to look at the exhibitions, make some art. And then every time a school group comes in, there's this trickle effect of kids dragging their parents in. And I think for, when a kid's excited about something, they're going to find any way and chance that they can do it. And I think just kind of following their lead a little bit definitely helps. I mean, I don't know how many times, that has happened. We have a school group come in and then on that weekend, a kid's dragging their parents, and the parent might not be the happiest to be there because they're intimidated by the gallery, or they're not sure what to expect. But the kids dragging them along, being like, I have to show you this work, and they're so excited, and they're and I think just maybe even just it's about putting your ego aside and being like, what, I'll let my 7-year-old teach me about this because I don't know about it, and they're excited, and just I want to follow that, and I want to encourage that. And even that's just something that I've even noticed in my experience teaching is having the kids to be able to kind of teach other kids how to do those things, and have that, you really see that spark kind of start to develop and grow. And I mean, that's really amazing. And I think, yeah, for parents to just kind of go with the flow a little bit, not be intimidated, maybe know that they don't know anything, and when they go into the exhibition, if they don't know anything, that's totally okay. They don't have to. If they know that they like something, if they know that they don't like something, it doesn't matter, because that's their experience, and that's what they, that's a very valid experience. I think there was a YouTube video I saw, and I could probably share the link at some point, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. There was this gallery down in Los Angeles that had John Baldessari and Jason Schwartzman do this little promotion video. And Jason Schwartzman was dropped off at the gallery with his friends, and he goes, all right, see you, and walks away. And then a big, this big giant John Baldessari head starts following him around and being like, hey, Jason, I want to go to the art gallery. And he's like, you go in there, and you just 8 hours go by, and like, I don't know anything. And he's really intimidated. And then one of the greatest metaphors about art I think I've ever heard, and it was by John Baldessari, and he related art to cheese, where he talked about, this idea of, when you're young, maybe you take a piece of gorgonzola cheese and you spit it out and you're like, whoa. But then, that same kid has a piece of Velveeta or a cheese slice, and they're like, oh, this is really good. But as they get older, maybe they develop that kind of taste for that gorgonzola with stronger levels of cheese, I guess. And really that's kind of what it is. And it's just about experimenting and learning, and, your tastes change and not being set in one way or the other. And I think that's really the key to it. In terms of, as resources, other thing, I think just kind of look and see what's going on in your community. I mean, all of the artists, they're your neighbors. They're, you can see them, anytime you're walking down the street, almost certainly you're walking by an artist that they're walking their dog or something like that. A lot of local businesses are, support artists. They show their work. So, take next time you're out at a restaurant or a cafe or something, look around. You're going to see art. It's art's all around us. We're inundated by it constantly, and just once you start to notice that how prevalent it is around us, you start to see those opportunities. And like I said, those things start to spiral and open up, and you start to, see it all around you, and those opportunities start to present themselves. I mean, if anyone was asking me how to follow along the same path that I did, I wouldn't have an answer for them, because nothing that came up I ever saw coming or planned for. It was, just blind dumb luck. I mean, that's not to diminish myself or the experiences I have, but in so many ways it's just blind dumb luck, and just opening my eyes and seeing what might be out there, and and not being afraid to admit if I don't know something, or be too afraid to take on an opportunity because maybe I don't know it, and it's like, what, that's okay, maybe I'll learn. And one of those things that I also have really noticed is people are afraid to get started because they don't know something, and they're afraid to ask those questions. But all too often, so many people are so happy to give those answers, because, I don't know how many people that I've had the chance to talk to, and they're like, wow, yeah, I wish I knew this when I was your age. And they tell you, and you're like, now I know that. And how much better along is it? Because, people like to tell stories, they like to share information. And, People like to talk about themselves.
Especially their
everyone,
passions.
but you know.
Yeah.
We're passionate about, yeah.
You were saying, it's just dumb luck and whatever, but your general demeanor, and we've just met, but it seems to be your character, and a common denominator of thought perhaps is your ability to stay positive, and your ability to see and understand opportunities that come your way. I think being grateful and being patient perhaps are not undervalued, but perhaps overseen or not utilized to the full extent. And I think it's way more. I think perhaps you are discrediting yourself slightly when you say it's luck, because again, you have to have the personality that accepts, receives, and understands opportunities in front of them. And that takes hard work, and that takes, lessons to have lived through, and that takes experience. And so perhaps luck, but perhaps also positivity, which might have more tangible effects than people realize.
Yeah, and I think honestly that there also needs to be say there's an element of privilege there too. I mean, I've been very lucky in a lot of those ways too. So to be able to see some of those opportunities and to be able to take that leap, not everyone is in the position to be able to do that either. So, I think that needs to be taken into account a little bit too.
I was going to say, that's not for me to say. I'm glad you said it.
Yeah, I mean, I was in a really lucky position where, I was able to have the supports in place to take on a contract at the gallery and not know what was going to happen next. And I ended up being able to, support myself by being mostly unemployed for almost a year after that contract ended. Not everyone would have been able to do that. And, to have the supports in place, the family in place to support that. I had a partner that was really supportive at that time as well. And, without them, I wouldn't have been able to do a lot of these things. I'm not saying that I wouldn't still be at the gallery had that not happened, or, had I turned down that contract or anything like that. But, to be able to take that leap and quit my job that I was working at, to be able to take a 6-month contract without knowing what was going to happen on the other end, that came from a place of privilege too. But
so supportive family and partners help. Yeah, they do.
I think, it's really about, that idea, kind of come back full circle, is that idea of community. If you surround yourself with a strong community, and you support that community, not just, you're not taking from it, you're actually actively contributing and supporting the people. When you're up and people are down, you help them out. And, I find, again, I would say, very lucky and privileged that for the most part of my life, that the times that I've been down, I've had some really wonderful people around me to, bring me back up. And, I think that does come from, being in that position myself and being able to help other people. And that idea of community, I think, is really important. And I think that's I think trying to build that and support that here and seeing that in Peterborough, it's really amazing. And now, especially with COVID and everything, those communities are starting to, grow virtually as well. I mean, having the opportunity to, be here and to meet both of you and, to be able to chat about art. I mean, speaking about privilege, we're just sitting about art for, like 2 hours or whatever. It's, that's a pretty amazing feat in itself. So.
Yeah, that's a very beautiful way to look at it. We have the opportunity.
On the topic of community, Andrew, any artists in the community that you want to shout out, or any influential figures who may not be artists but are contributing to the scene? You're gonna miss people, and we'll
I'm
their
definitely
forgiveness in
miss,
advance.
Include them in your Christmas card list.
Yeah, it's one of those things I don't even know where to start. I know throughout this whole conversation, I've definitely dropped quite a few names. But I mean, there's been so many incredible people in this community. Even growing up, my high school art teacher, Chris Mann, who was, an incredible influence on me, great support. I think, learned a lot of my teaching style from him in a very sarcastic but supportive and fun environment, really about building community. Our Studio 241, cohorts, some really incredible artists that have come out of that. One of them being, Beck Gilmore Osborne, incredible video artist. Went to high school with them, and to still be able to have that connection really was fostered in that classroom, and it's incredible in that. As we kind of get into the community, I'd be remiss not to mention the director at the Art Gallery, Celeste Scopelides, the curator Finn Leach. I don't know, I almost pronounced her name there. Finn Leach. The previous curator, Carla Garnett, who was wonderful as well. And all the staff that I've worked with there, including, people that have recently retired, like Janice, and, Jane, who was in this role before me, and then Briar, who we came up through the ranks together, started up. It's been really incredible. And then just, in the community, I don't know where to even start. There's just so many incredible people. Kind of a snapshot of the way Peterborough works. I mean, all of these people are, creating such an elaborate and amazing, wonderful arts community, but just a community in of itself. I mean, I played baseball with Bill Kimball, who's the director of Public Energy, John Lockyer, who was the former director at Art Space, just playing baseball every week with these people. It's pretty amazing. And, just starting to, I feel like I'm at the Oscar speech. I feel like start coming on soon to tell me to shut up. But there's just a incredible bit of community that's here. And even people that don't even necessarily realize that they've the impact that they've had. I mean, one story, maybe I'll end it on this, is kind of a shout out. Growing up, so there's a wonderful artist and gallery operator here in town. Her name is Laurel Pollock. She's worked at the gallery as an instructor as well. I don't think she actually knows this. I haven't brought it up to her, but she lived on the same street as me growing up. And she actually at one point developed, it was a periodical zine that we called The Union, which was the name of the street that we grew up on in the park. And she, brought all of the neighborhood kids together and was like, all right. And we developed this, like, we wrote stories, we made news articles, we took pictures and we shared them. And she created this little, zine for us. And, I think, throughout this conversation, that just kind of, poked its head up there. But, those kind of connections. Next time I talk to her, I'll definitely have to bring that up, just because I don't think I've ever actually told her that. But that's just the way the community's kind of built up, and to be a part of that, it's quite incredible.
You seem very enthralled by it. Yeah, very passionate. Do you want to take the time to shout yourself out? Where can we find you online?
You can. I've got Instagram. I would say Twitter, but I don't do anything exciting over there. And my website, all just my first name, last name.
Can you spell those for the listeners?
It's Andrew Ihamaki. That's AndrewIhamaki.
Okay, and that's you on Instagram?
That's me on Instagram. That's my website. And from there you can probably find pretty much anything else.
.com?
Yes, .com.
Yes. All right. But again, thank you so much, Andrew, for coming on the AudioVisio podcast, speaking to Matt and I, speaking about the Art Gallery of Peterborough, speaking to us about being a program coordinator for the gallery, speaking to us about your art, speaking to us about we don't have to look too much into Leutsch and Freud, so don't worry about that. But no, you are a very passionate, a dedicated leader for your community, and it was a pleasure to have you on to speak to you. So thank you again.
As somebody who sees a lot of value in art, what you're doing in helping to make it accessible, you may not appreciate how valuable and important that is, and the contribution that you're making, not only to art, but to all the things that art touches. I see it. Adriana's nodding her head like she sees it as well. So that's very cool. That's something to be proud of. And I'm grateful as a member of communities at large.
Well, thank you so much. Those are some really kind words, and I really appreciate them. And thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yes,
Thanks for
it
doing
has
this, man.